I never thought Valentine's Day would turn into one of the most mortifying, adrenaline-fueled nights of my life. My husband and I had been married for 3 years, and every the 14th of February he went out of his way to do something special. Last year, it was a romantic getaway. The year before, a surprise candlelit dinner at home. This year, he decided to spice things up with a bag full of goodies from an adult store. When I opened the gift, I felt my face heat up. There was an assortment of things: lingerie, edible massage oil, and then a sleek, high-tech vibrator that came with a remote. It was supposed to be discreet, designed for public fun. I laughed nervously, but my husband, grinning like a kid in a candy store, convinced me to give it a try. We started off at dinner, in a dimly lit restaurant packed with couples. I slipped the device into place before we left the house, and he had the remote. Everything was going fine until the appetizers arrived. Without warning, he cranked it up to the highest setting. I let out an involuntary gasp, my fork clattering against my plate. My body jerked so hard that I knocked over my water glass. A few people turned to stare, including an elderly couple at the next table. My husband bit his lip, barely holding in his laughter, his hand still firmly on the remote. "Turn it down!" I hissed, trying to regain my composure. Instead, the sadistic man clicked the button again. I swore I saw stars. My leg twitched under the table, knocking against something. Oh no! The waiter's tray. In slow motion, I watched as a martini and a plate of pasta went flying through the air. The guy barely dodged it, but the drink splashed onto another woman's lap. The restaurant went silent. My husband quickly fumbled with the remote, but in his panic, he pressed the wrong button. Full freaking power. I slammed my hands onto the table, gripping it like I was riding out an earthquake. My head tilted back involuntarily, and a sound that was absolutely not appropriate for a public place escaped my lips. People were definitely staring now. "Are you okay, ma'am?" the waiter asked cautiously. I was not okay. "Yeah," I managed to choke out, shooting a murderous glare at my husband, who looked like he was about to explode from holding in his laughter. Somehow, I made it through dinner, though I barely tasted my food. My husband promised to behave for the rest of the night, and I naively believed him. That was mistake number 1. Mistake number 2, agreeing to wear it while we went for a walk through the park. The night was peaceful, the air crisp. Couples strolled hand in hand, enjoying the romantic atmosphere. And then, out of nowhere, buzz. Not just a little buzz. A full-throttle, set-the-house-on-fire kind of buzz. I tripped, nearly face-planting onto the pavement. My hands flew to my stomach, as if that would somehow stop the sensation. My husband howled with laughter, doubling over, clutching the remote like it was the best toy he'd ever owned. And that's when disaster struck. A jogger, distracted by my bizarre behavior, crashed directly into me. I went down, and the tiny remote slipped out of my husband's hand right into a nearby fountain. We both froze. The vibrations did not stop. My husband, in full panic mode, ran to fish out the remote. Water sloshed over his sleeves as he desperately pressed the buttons. Nothing. The device was waterproof. It wasn't going to stop anytime soon. At this point, I was walking funny. Scratch that I was hobbling like I had a serious medical condition. Every few seconds, another surge hit, and I had to stop and pretend to adjust my shoe. A mother walking past me pulled her young daughter closer, giving me a suspicious glare. "We need to get home." "Now," I said through gritted teeth. We power walked, like our lives depended on it. Halfway there, we passed a police officer. My husband, still dripping wet from the fountain rescue attempt, looked insanely guilty. The officer eyed us up and down. "You folks okay?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. My husband was about to answer, but right then another pulse. My knee buckled, and I let out a sound that can only be described as a mix between a moan and a dying animal. The officer's eyes widened. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. Somehow, we made it home without getting arrested for public indecency. The moment I got inside, I bolted to the bathroom. And guess what? The damn thing had a lock mode. The user manual was in the living room, but at this point, I had lost all faith in my husband's ability to function as a human. It took a full 5 minutes of frantic Googling before I found the emergency shutdown sequence. When I finally got it to stop, I collapsed onto the floor, exhausted, traumatized, and questioning all my life choices. My husband, the absolute menace that he is, had the audacity to say, "So, wanna try the other settings later?" I threw a pillow at his head. And that was the last time I ever trusted a Valentine's Day gift from him. Moral of the story? Read the damn user manual before you end up accidentally performing in the most public private show of your life. I will be very grateful if you subscribe to our channel.
I've been married to my husband for 6 years. He's not the most romantic guy, but I always told myself it was fine. Love isn't about grand gestures, right? It's about stability, partnership, and those little things that show you care. At least that's what I used to think. The other day, my husband came home from work with an excited look in his eyes. He bounced on his heels and grinned like a kid hiding a secret behind his back. "Ooh, I've got something for you," he said, his voice practically vibrating with excitement. I felt my heart flutter a little. Maybe this was one of those rare, out-of-the-blue surprises that couples talk about. Maybe, just maybe, he was finally learning that romance doesn't have to be reserved for special occasions. "Guess which hand?" he asked, shifting whatever it was behind his back. I smiled, playing along. "Right hand." He dramatically placed something in my palm. I looked down, expecting a small box, maybe a charm bracelet, or at the very least, something sentimental. It was a pen. A plain blue ballpoint pen. Just a regular everyday pen. I stared at it, trying to find the joke, the hidden meaning, anything that could justify why he was so damn excited about handing me a cheap pen. "Well?" he asked, eyes twinkling. "Do you love it?" "It's a pen." "Yeah, but not just any pen. This one writes super smoothly, see?" He grabbed a piece of junk mail from the counter and started scribbling loops and lines like a kindergarten teacher showing off a new set of crayons. "It's got this gel ink that dries fast. No smudging. And look, it's got a comfortable grip." I was still standing there, silent, holding the pen in my open palm. I had two choices: fake excitement, thank him profusely, and pretend this was the most touching gift ever. Be honest and admit I was incredibly disappointed. I chose a third option. I forced a smile, nodded, and said, "Wow, a pen. That's really something." He beamed. "I knew you'd love it." Then he kissed my forehead and walked off, completely oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. This man had never not once surprised me with flowers, jewelry, or anything remotely romantic. But he got this excited about giving me a damn pen. I'd stopped expecting gifts for my birthday. I'd stopped expecting anything on Valentine's Day. Christmas gifts? Sure, if I made a list, sent him links, and practically put the item in the cart myself. But this was a new level of disappointment, because this meant he actually thought about getting me something on his own and chose a pen. I let it go. I convinced myself it was silly to be upset over something so small, but a few days later, the resentment crept back in. So I decided to test something. That weekend, I went out shopping and picked up a small, cute notebook, the kind that would pair perfectly with a pen. Then, I sat down at the dining table with my new notebook and his oh-so-special pen, and I started writing. Not a journal, not notes. I wrote a list. Every single time I had put effort into making him feel special, the time I saved up for months to buy him that limited edition watch, he casually mentioned liking, and he wore it twice before shoving it in a drawer. The time I cooked his favorite meal after a long day, and he barely looked up from his phone while eating it. The time I planned a surprise weekend getaway, and he spent most of it watching television in the hotel room. The countless times I made sure his birthday felt special custom cakes, surprise parties, thoughtful gifts. Then, on the opposite page, I wrote down everything he had ever done as a romantic gesture for me. That time he bought me a ballpoint pen. That was it. That was the list. I closed the notebook, and for the first time in years, I seriously considered whether I was happy in this marriage. The next day, I left the notebook open on the table. I didn't say anything. I just let it sit there. That night, I found him in the kitchen, the notebook in front of him, his fingers drumming on the table. He looked up at me, expression unreadable. Is this how you really feel? I crossed my arms. You tell me, does anything in that book seem unfair? He hesitated. Then, in a small voice, he said, I didn't realize you felt like this. I let out a bitter laugh. Of course you didn't, because you never thought to ask. That was the beginning of the real conversation, the one where I told him flat out that I didn't feel cherished, that I didn't need expensive gifts, but I needed to feel like he put effort into making me feel loved, that it wasn't about the pen, it was about what the pen represented. To my surprise, he didn't get defensive. He didn't shut down. He listened. And you know what? He actually changed. A week later, he surprised me with a small wrapped box. Inside was a bracelet with a tiny engraved charmone that matched something I'd admired months ago but never expected him to remember. It wasn't about the price. It was about the effort. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like he finally understood. So, yeah, maybe that stupid ballpoint pen was the best gift he ever gave me because in the end, it finally got him to see me.